Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Okay, welcome everyone to the Near Memo, episode 25, our silver anniversary. And as always, Mike and David are here with me, and we're going to be talking about the news of the week in the world of local social and small business commerce that we always talk about. And to everybody that's, well, I was going to say something about fires, but hopefully they'll go away soon. All right, there's my sentiment.
Couldn't agree more.
Yes, natural disasters abound these days.
Yes.
And unnatural ones.
My life is a mix of very, very strange juxtapositions, which I won't go into in detail. We're doing some remodeling at our house, and so I'm looking at kitchen countertops against the backdrop of the apocalypse. So it's like this weird society is collapsing, and should I have porcelain or granite for my countertops? That's the way my brain is working these days. So, all right. On that note, David.
Well, let's see if we can distract you for at least 15 minutes here with the Near Memo. So I'll dive in. Oh, Mike, you're trying to say something.
I was going to say that given that this is Greg's mood to start, I'm going to really work hard to be positive on the phone.
All right. Well, let me kick things off with a piece of news that, according to Mike, is not actually news, but Google did promote it this week in an announcement on their blog.google called The Keyword, which is the new review experience within Google Maps that apparently has been out for some people on Androids for quite a while, and they say is now rolling out to the iOS devices, which, of course, I'm not an Android user, so I haven't seen it. It was news to me. It's a very simple interface that's essentially more of a selection type of interface where they're asking specific questions about specific attributes of a business. And presumably these attributes tie in pretty well to the ones that have been displayed in Google Maps for quite a while. But my big takeaway from it is that Google is collecting much more structured data, even though they position this as a user experience improvement. And I think it flies directly in the face of Yelp's longstanding commitment to long form reviews and the fact that they think this is what users want to read and write. And Google here is taking the exact opposite approach which they've had on the reading side for quite a while now with these little sort of snippet attribute things, and they're now extending it into the user side of things. The box that says share more about your experience is about, 8% of the vertical height of the review interface. The rest of it is devoted to things that you can just tap to leave a very quick review about each of these more granular data attributes. So I just think it's kind of Google doubling down on quick and structured, and to the exact polar opposite of Yelp on long and unstructured. So certainly an interesting change, evolution from Google. I think it follows a trend that they've had for the last several years in Google Maps.
One thing about it is it gives them a structured sequence of information that works very well with machine learning because it can be reasoned about. So they know that the restaurant has this specific feature, and then they can answer queries with a high degree of confidence. Is this a cheap restaurant? Is it, kind of question. So in that sense, it gives them much better tools to drive against in terms of search results. But what I noticed in restaurants, which I thought was interesting, there was a lot of non-sentiment driven questions like price, for example.
Yep.
And I thought that was kind of unusual. I thought,
well, dine in, delivery,
right,
takeout,
which seem they don't. I suppose in terms of evaluating how good does a restaurant do at these different functions, maybe that's a way that they could take it, so you can see if the restaurant does all good or just part of it well or whatever.
One of the thoughts I had that I wondered about was how does this, or whether this translates into other verticals. I mean, I would imagine there are corresponding data points that you could formulate for a lot of different verticals. Hotels, for example,
Yep.
But
They're
does
already doing it in hotels. They've been
yeah,
doing it.
does it get into in other service areas? Does it work equally well?
I think it does, right? In many, anyway, at least sort of more complex services. Like I can see it working very well in medicine, right? How long was your wait? How was the doctor's bedside manner? What treatment did you get? Blah, 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 blah. How, what insurance did they take? It seems like even in a category like that, which is, hopefully more of a, once a year or once a decade type of experience, that there's still this structured information that would be valuable to searchers and to Google.
And they did roll it out in April of the pandemic year in almost every other service category, lawyers and accountants and plumbers and roofers.
You're saying a comparable UI?
Yes, an attribute-driven faceted interface with 3 or 4 attributes that a user could choose from that we started scraping. And it's very nice because it's very structured. It allows you to do some really nice analysis over time and compare yourself to other competitors. It's a very useful thing because it's effectively a survey. So we brought it right in to gather up, and it's in all the. When I looked last, it was in 340 service categories.
So a quick point that kind of is a segue to you, Mike, in a way. Even though David, you were going to do the segue. The qualitative.
Happy to let you take it, Greg.
Okay, all right. Qualitative information can be very useful in many situations, especially in a more complicated transaction, a higher consideration purchase. So I was talking before we got on about buying solar panels, and I looked at all the reviews for the 4 vendors that we were choosing from among, and I read all the Yelp reviews and all the Google reviews, and some of the comments that were made were very, very interesting and helpful in helping us make a choice. And if I'd only seen stars, or if I'd only seen prices, it would not have been as useful to me in making a decision.
So what were your buying criteria for solar panels? Can you distill the things that helped make your decision?
Quality of service, the absence of complaints, particular complaints, the equipment that was being used, among other things. Those are the kind of top.
So 2 of those 3, it seems like Google could assess via survey. Equipment and quality.
Yes, but in one particular case, there were some problems with a subcontractor that was used, and so the subcontractor had a lien against the job, and so things like that don't come out in surveys, and that reflected on the service or the reliability, the credibility of one of the providers. Mm-hmm. So that kind of stuff wouldn't come out in a survey.
But the kinds of things they are currently asking for is timeliness, quality, professionalism in the services right now. So some of it
so you could probably handle like 80% of the issues in a structured data survey, probably.
Right.
That's assuming that you knew the reviewer was legit. Over to you, Mike.
And assuming you did decide to dive in, which is what my story was about, which was the real cost of fake reviews. Gentleman who had spent a lot of money on a forklift came into the forum, hat in hand, because he didn't go beyond this review summary. He sent somebody a check for a lot of money, and they never delivered. When you dig into this company, you find a ton of fake reviews. There was 125 reviews, roughly 80 of them were fake, and the real reviews were all very negative. And when you dug further, looked at the Better Business Bureau, even though Yelp liked to claim they should have looked at Yelp, they weren't on Yelp. I hate to tell Yelp that, but they weren't there. But if you looked at the Better Business Bureau, you would find both Better Business Bureau complaints and Better Business reviews, all of which were negative. And so the corpus at Better Business Bureau was totally negative. The corpus at Google gave him 4.2. And this guy, not doing due diligence, fell for it. And he came into the forum to try to see if he could get the fake reviews cleared up, which then got escalated to Google, and they're struggling with whether they're fake or not, which raises this question for me, which Google is promoting their incredible artificial intelligence. They can translate between 109 different languages. They can, if you drop a picture of poison ivy into Lens, they can tell you it's poison ivy. And yet after 13 years, they've been incapable of developing a machine learning algorithm that can successfully limit the impact of fake reviews, because these reviews were clearly fake. And, I did an analysis with Curtis Boyd's help. Curtis Boyd runs this company to track fake reviews, where it was clear that of at least 50 or 45 of the reviewers had reviewed other businesses in common across the whole world, which the chance of that happening is about zero, right?
Which is a pretty easy thing for Google to track.
Very easy to track. If I can track it and Curtis can track it, Google should be able to track it. So it really raises the question: why has Google not solved this problem? It's not a technical question, I don't think.
It's a version of the user reviews version of they can put a man on the moon, but why can't they make a good cup of coffee? Remember that commercial?
Yeah, but now everybody can make a good cup of coffee.
Well, so Google clearly can do more than it's doing with its technology. I mean, the stuff that Curtis Boyd and his Objection.co, or the transparency company, I think he's rebranding, is doing. Google can do all the same things he's doing: NLP, comparison of IP addresses, looking at review velocity, looking at profiles, comparing them. But they're not. And
what they do whenever they tighten it up, they get a lot of false positives, because we see in the forum a tremendous increase in users complaining they posted a review and it's not showing. So it's not even clear to me why that would be the false positive.
You could, as we discussed sort of before this today, you could do some mix of machine and human moderation and probably minimize that.
Right, but what I'm guessing is that the human moderation is what's caught in Google's throat. There's no motivation for them to do so, and they
well.
don't.
So what they rely on right now is a crowdsourcing system where individuals are supposed to flag spam reviews, right? I mean, that's their chief enforcement mechanism.
Oh, I think they have some other back-end algorithm, because it periodically, as I started to
well,
develop,
certainly, but I mean, that's one of their main mechanisms, if it's not the main one. And the reality is that most of these fake reviews are generated by the businesses themselves in one form or another, either friends and family, or they're paying some service to do it. And so these business owners themselves are not motivated to take down their own reviews or to flag their own reviews. And I think it's very unlikely that competitors are going to be flagging false positive reviews in most of these cases. So I think that whole system is probably fundamentally flawed.
Yeah, there's something flawed. I mean, to me, it's attention focus. They just don't seem motivated to really fix the problem. Again, it's been 13 years. It just shouldn't be. Yelp does have a lot of false positives, but manages to make that impact light reviewers. Better Business Bureau seems to have a system in place that captures the essence of this company anyways. This company has clearly robbed people of somewhere in the order of about $300,000 or $400,000.
Well, they rely on complaints, I think, for that.
Well, there's two systems. They have reviews and complaints, but the reviews reflected the complaints pretty closely in this case.
But the BBB does a lot of human review of those complaints, is my understanding, which Google, as you said, is never going to do. So
that's true. I just don't think it's rocket science. Clearly, they're not motivated to do it. Clearly, it's very frustrating. It's frustrating for this guy. I sent my son up there the other day to see if this place was real. It had been there, but they've closed up shop. They've moved on. They opened a place down the street with a new corporate name.
It's trust is a big is a big issue online, and it's interesting to me that Google doesn't perceive any threat to its brand from this. At all, seemingly. And it's interesting that Yelp has not gone after them in the way that Apple is going after Facebook, for example, or Android by implication with privacy, right? I mean, Yelp could mount a campaign and say, we are aggressive about cleaning up these reviews. You can trust our reviews. Other platforms are replete with fraud. I don't know why they don't go after.
I don't know why they don't mention Google by name and just compare. In this case, it wouldn't have been possible because the business didn't have a Yelp profile. But there's got to be plenty of major disconnects between what a GMB profile looks like and what a Yelp profile looks like. So I don't know. It seems. Yeah, I agree. This is a much. It seems like a much surer tactic to get eyeballs away from Google than hoping that the Senate Antitrust Commission will slap Google on the wrist. So
and force Google to rank Yelp higher, which is that's a weak strategy to start with, right? That's Yelp's whole hope here.
Exactly.
It's a brand strategy. Trust us. We have more integrity, but they're not doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, so my issue item is quite.
I got a lot of problems with you people.
I'm having a tough week. Anyway, my item is really from an item that was in Wednesday's newsletter. Square becoming a bank. So Square has had, it didn't become a bank, but it owns a bank now. It had sort of Square financing options before, and we've talked about Shopify and Stripe doing similar things. But now Square has a bona fide bank where you can have a checking account, a savings account, and they give you other services, access to loans. So the three pieces are checking, savings, and loans, and there are no fees at all, no overdraft fees, no account fees. And I think it's a very, very powerful addition to their existing and expanding services lineup. And they may not be in a totally unique position, but they're in a pretty interesting space right now vis-a-vis sort of small businesses and providing a whole range of services.
Yeah, on the loan side, they have such tremendous insight into cash flow and operations that they can loan things more efficiently, more effectively, with less risk. So their loan profits should be higher.
Yeah, exactly. And they are much closer to the business than a bank because they're right at the center of that operation with their point of sale. I mean, my sense is, I think if you look at all the surveys, the CSAT surveys of banks, people hate their banks for the most part. And it seems to me that traditional banks, which have been trying to get into mobile payments and trying to upgrade their user experiences, are really going to get disrupted by companies like Square and Shopify and Stripe to varying degrees, because the market is ripe for that.
What's not to love about Wells Fargo?
Well,
they have some sort of disgusting discovery about once every 6 months, right? That's some cheating they did in the mortgage or in the credit cards or something.
Or Chase or B of A or any of them. Any of them. They're all kind of horrible institutions.
The other question I have is 10 years from now, we're going to be talking about Square in the same way we're talking about Apple in terms of having aggregated so many services that they are now considered anti-competitive, or Stripe or Square or one of these types.
Well, it's like you can do it until you get across some threshold of size and market power, and then you can't. But
I don't see Square anytime soon. I don't see them getting there to the level of antitrust. I think that there's so many point of sales out there, and plenty of big banks own point of sale systems, right? Didn't First Data acquire like 2 or 3 of them a few years ago?
Probably.
That's attached to one of these huge banks. So I don't see it, Mike, as raising any flags anytime soon at the antitrust.
I just think 10 years from now, when Stripe and Square and Shopify are the next big things, right, then it becomes a question.
It's possible. I was going to say, though, this is definitely a way to decrease churn because it's such a pain in the butt to change banks. As somebody who's done that a couple times in this past decade, as a result of some of these stories that you guys were mentioning earlier, as a consumer trying to vote with my wallet, it's a really hard thing to do. So I think it's really smart from Square's standpoint to really lock in their customers, and I think that they are providing a pretty good experience as a Square user, as well as somebody who's helped businesses set up Square websites and connect them to points of sale. I think that they're providing a good experience on both sides. So I think it's really going to, if anything, it will decrease their churn further from what I assume is already pretty low churn.
So when I was doing the books for Local U, I went to our local credit union, which is very friendly and has always treated me very nice with good car loans, although a lot of paperwork. And to get a $5,000 line of credit against an account that carried an account balance of $60,000 every month, except for the week of January
1st, right?
Right. Yeah. But every other month carried a $50,000 balance. It took a raft of paperwork and an amazing amount of cruft to get a $5,000 protection against the checking account. It was like unbelievable, right?
And the PPP loan saga that just played out over the last year, a lot of small businesses got screwed in that, and a lot of the money went to larger enterprises who arguably didn't need the money, who were sort of savvier and able to take advantage of it, and a lot of the true small businesses had real trouble. And this a friendlier financing entity, as you sort of are alluding to, I think is going to be something that a lot of business owners recognize is important for them.
So, I mean, finance has always been something that companies do historically, right? Ford got into it, GE got into it, Apple's getting into it. And the question is is it because growth has slowed in their core areas and they need this to, or has the market slowed, or is it just a good fit and they're doing it because it makes sense to do it? Is it where capital is best deployed, I guess?
I would suspect that there are a couple of things going on. There has been some slowing of point of sale adoption, and it's a natural extension of their product evolution, I think also. They started providing financing pretty early because they had access, they had visibility on the cash flow. And so this was a product they could offer. And I think this emerges from that. And it also is good for, it's good for their story to the public markets because, the number I quoted in the piece was that, some analysts had said that payroll, accounting and invoicing and sort of this cluster of services is $500 billion in annual fees paid by small businesses. Whether or not that's literally true or sort of directionally doesn't matter. There's a big, huge pot of money there.
Right.
Sounds good. Well, all right. It seems like a positive enough note to end on. That there's a huge pot of money.
I don't think we should fetishize positivity. It's appropriate, but not always.
Wow, you've really had a rough week.
No, it's just you both know me well enough that I don't fetishize positivity.
My wife is up in Mendocino with a friend north of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Very nice.
It's very nice for her, and I'm sort of holding down the fort and doing all the stuff and working and got the pets and the kids and all of that. So
and the roofers.
The roofers have not come yet.
Oh.
But I can tell you, people who are watching this that want to know about roofing and want to know about solar installation, I can tell you everything you need to know.
I'm getting a geothermal heat pump put in this next month, so we can have a conversation.
So that's very interesting because I've been looking at heat pumps as well. So does it?
You guys can start an alternative energy section of nearmedia.co.
Well, yeah, the heat pump doesn't rely on the furnace in the same way that, I have gas, and so it could shift over to electricity, which I could subsidize with the solar.
Right, although electricity in California doesn't seem like a very reliable deliverable.
Well, this is part of the apocalyptic mindset because the power grid is breaking down, right? You can't rely on a fundamental thing like that. It shows that the society is perhaps coming to an end. But we'll be back.
I worry about the telephone poles falling down. So.
Yeah, but society is coming to an end, but we're just getting started. This is one of the tech company cliches. Blah 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 blah. We're just getting started. So anyway.
Well, I don't know if that's a little grim even for my taste.
All right,
Greg, but with that we can say goodbye.
I think we should quit while we're quote ahead at this point.
Okay. All right. Anyway, thanks for listening. See you next week. As always.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.